What?
Yes. Okay. Hi. Thank you for asking us for making a presentation to you about China. So now let's start doing business in China. Okay. China is a complicated country. Why? First of all, the law in China is not the same like the law in the US. Government is not the same like in the US. The cost of construction is not the same at all. It's totally different. And also you are making business in a different currency. You're not making business with dollars, you're making business with yuanes. Okay. So let's go to next slide. Let's go to next slide. Okay, so now, who is the audience? The audience is the executive that is traveling to China at this moment. Okay? Next slide. Okay, what I said before, the difficulty of making business in China, the government is not the same, and the cost of construction are not the same, and the currency is different. Okay, let's go to next slide. So now, who are the stakeholders in this case? So I think the stakeholders are Chinese citizens, the government, the shareholder of the architect group, the executive, and the people that live near the new building where it's going to be constructed. Okay, so thank you for listening. Now, Michael, we continue with next slide.
Business etiquette is extremely important in China. One of the most important things to remember when you're doing business in China is the importance of rank and seniority. So the Chinese delegation will expect that the most senior person will enter the room first. It's also important to dress to impress in China. Wear modest colors and dress in good suits. It will show rank and seniority. Next slide. Your entrance is important in China. The Chinese delegation will expect the most senior person to enter first, or if you're already in the meeting room and they enter, the most senior person will enter first. So be careful with the entrance in order to not offend. Next slide. Face is an important concept in Chinese business. Maintaining face is extremely important. It's thought of as honor and integrity. One thing that you want to avoid is any type of sarcasm or self-degradation. Next slide. It's important, the greetings in China are a little bit different than they are domestically in the United States. They do not shake hands as hard as we do here in the United States. They don't squeeze as hard. So make sure to not over squeeze. Also keep eye contact to a minimum. If you do too much eye contact or squeeze too hard during the handshake, it can be viewed as a challenge.
As with all cultures, there are some things you should avoid doing in China in order to have a better stay and make it more comfortable for your hosts. The first thing is do not bring up political issues. The US and China have many issues on which they disagree. We don't want to get this in the way of any business dealings that we're doing. Don't bring up Taiwan. Don't bring up Tibet. Don't bring up the Uyghurs. Don't bring up what Chinese border disputes with India. Don't bring up the US and Chinese difficulties in the South China Sea. It's not going to serve any purpose other than to make things more uncomfortable for you and your host. Dining in China is a very big part of the cultural experience. Even college students typically eat out every day. When you are dining, do not offer to split the bill. This can be seen as insulting to your host and isn't something that is generally done. If you are offering to take people out for dinner, expect to pay the entire bill. This will avoid any kind of unpleasantness towards the end or uncomfortable situations. Also, tipping. Tipping is not typically a Chinese custom, especially in restaurants that are local, run locally. It may be different in corporate franchises that are everywhere, but in local Chinese places, it's not typically done. Finally, just some general culture things. Don't touch things. So China has over 50 ethnic and cultural minorities there, and all of them have things that are sacred. So If you're out touring different buildings, temples, whatever you may be doing in your spare time, don't reach out and touch things. It may be offensive to the people who maintain them and go to them on a daily basis. Conversely, personal space in China is not as big an issue as it is in the US or Western Europe, especially in public areas. People are going to be very cramped in. They're not being rude. Everyone's just trying to get to where they're going. That being said, I will pass it on to Alexia.
Okay, another important thing to remember is to learn greetings in in Mandarin or Cantonese, depending on the language that is being used. So some common phrases of hello, thank you, goodbye would be very helpful for you. I think it would show a sign of respect that you took the time to appreciate and engage in the Chinese culture. Next slide. Time. Being on time is extremely important in the Chinese culture and when doing business. It shows that you taking the negotiation very seriously, that you value their time, that you have good work ethic. So it's very, very important to be on time. Please give yourself enough time to get to and from meetings. Next slide. You should bring a lot of business cards, and it's advisable that one side be in English and the other side in simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese. When you give your cards to the Chinese business men or women, you want to make sure that the card is facing, the Chinese side is facing the recipient, and you want to, when they exchange their cards, you want to look at your card attentively. You also want to make sure that it's in good, a good design, good quality. Lastly, as head of our architecture firm, we have every confidence that you will do well in these business negotiations and lead to a strong relationship in the future. Enjoy your trip.